Hey, y'all listening to the Smoke Meat Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Pittman. Today, we are brought to you once again by Joe's Underground at the corner of 8th and Broad in Augusta, Georgia. Go check out Joe's on Facebook right now, Joe's Underground. They've got some ass-kicking new t-shirts out there. You need to get you one, beat the rush, or get them while they still got them. They're at the corner of 8th and Broad in Augusta, Georgia. Great folks, great food, great drinks. I goes to Joe's and so should you. Today, I've got a special guest, a young man by the name of Maximilian Gordon, owns the LionMan School of Rewilding. Me and Maximilian, we talk a lot today about wild plants, about getting back to nature, about getting back to the old ways of doing things. It was just such an awesome talk. I mean, I can't even start to scratch the surface in this intro. So, here we go. We're just going to go on ahead and get this thing on the road. Hey, how you doing this morning, Maximilian?
I am great. I'm great. Thanks so much for taking the time to reach out to me and think that my information that I have to share today is of value.
Oh, it's definitely valuable. I know you got the LionMan School of Rewilding. Tell me a little bit about what rewilding is for the people out there that don't know. I'm fairly familiar.
Yeah, so I'm happy to hear that you are familiar. It's something that's been happening for a while. I think people who have found issues with our modern way of living and have questioned our systems of care, our systems of agriculture, our systems of all of our systems. Einstein said that you can't solve a problem with the same level of thinking that got you into the problem in the first place. So rewilding, different people, for me, it came to me from a man named Daniel Vitalis, and he talks about rewilding yourself. And both, so it's you're going through a whole series of things that essentially it's engaging your whole self with the ecology of your landscape. So it's a self condition. It's a reprogramming of yourself by yourself to yourself. So it starts with yourself.
Okay. That's one thing now. A lot of people, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I'm almost 50, and I remember, not so long ago, when I was a kid, we did things a lot different. Now we didn't have all the technology. We didn't have, everything wasn't at our fingertips, and even way before that, people would go out and hunt. They would fish. I grew up doing those things. They would garden. They were a lot more self-reliant and understood. Okay, I've got a headache. This plant right here, it'll help cure it. And a lot of people don't know willow bark, aspirin.
Sure.
Foxglove for heart problems. Things like that. And
Sure. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you, Brad.
And to me, I'm one of those people. If you don't remember your history, you're going to repeat it. Well, this is one of those things where we need to remember our history because this quarantine, if nothing else, has showed us that we're fragile, and we're dependent on way too much stuff right now, and we need to get back to where we can fend for ourselves and do what we need to do.
Yeah. I could take this in a lot of directions. Like things that coming up for me is the word fragile. One of my teachers, Arthur Haynes, talks about is a concept called hormesis, or being anti-fragile. So when you have stress in your life, it makes you stronger instead of weaker. And so for this, I feel like this current situation with the corona, it's made me stronger. At first, it scared me because, but then I looked at my fear, and I kind of faced it. What was my fear? And I went through the worst case scenarios, and it's also, generally speaking, it's kind of reiterated and reinforced my trust in plants. One of my teacher, Stephen Buhner, talks about things are totally, things change forever when plants save your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I believe, it's also, it's like, what is this virus teaching us? What is the function, the ecological function of this virus? And there's things like, in at least in the northeast of the United States, Lyme disease, there's been correlations with invasive plants and invasive pathogenic organisms appearing in our ecosystem. So there's been some research saying that 6 months before Lyme disease shows up in an area, you'll find a plant called Japanese knotweed showing up, which has one of the highest containing plants of a plant compound called resveratrol, which is extremely antibacterial and an antioxidant rich compound,
Mm-hmm.
phytochemical or plant chemical. And once you start paying attention to that and cueing into that, that really can help you. Another example is, the cure being next to the poison is poison ivy, and you have spotted touch me not right next to it, which has compounds. So if you're touching poison ivy, you brush up on the bark, excuse me, or the bark, because it is a perennial vine, the hairs or the leaves, which have oils that can cause um, dermatitis or itching or rashes.
Mm-hmm.
The spotted touch me not has compounds in its stem that when you rub it on your skin that has just been exposed can help remove those oils. So those are just two examples of things that when we start paying attention and cueing into our environment, our natural environment, we become stronger by the stress instead of weaker. So,
Well, that's pretty cool about the poison ivy because I grew up in the woods and I've always been lucky. I'm not allergic to it. It doesn't really do much to me.
mhm.
But I never knew about the other plant. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but what else? I was thinking you were mentioning hormesis. Yeah, I'm also just remembering, you know, anthropologically and archaeologically speaking, our species, Homo sapiens sapiens, the dates are always changing, but in evolution, if you believe in Darwinian evolution,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not saying it's black, I'm saying, I have issues too with our modern forms of evolution. So, kind of going against black and white. But according to that paradigm, well, our species is 300,000 years old,
Mm-hmm.
300,000. So our genes, our genetic makeup, our genetic script remembers that. And so some of my other teachers talk about a new kind of paradigm called epigenetics
Mm-hmm.
that rose in the 70s from a researcher named Bruce Lipton out of Stanford University. And he talks about, just because you have a predisposition to certain cancers doesn't mean you're going to get the cancer. And that doesn't necessarily mean we should go out and cut off our breasts because our mothers had breast cancer. And in fact, that kind of doing that also increases your risk. But he talks about how your environment impacts your genome. So essentially, everything you do, every air molecule that you breathe, plant, every food that you ingest, every molecule of water that you ingest, every smile that you smile has a positive impact on your genes by turning on certain genes that promote longevity and uh, antioxidant function and happiness function. And the opposite is true too. So the more we're exposed to foreign chemicals like DDT or glyphosate or air pollutants, it's telling our genes to upregulate and open its door to certain things that can cascade and potentially cause the formation of cancer cells or things along those lines.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
that makes a lot of sense. Don't know if Steve had told you a whole lot about me. I've been a paramedic for a long time, and a little over 4 years ago, I had 2 strokes.
Hmm.
And you're talking about the happiness and it's basically the taking care of yourself by what you eat and things like that. I'm not the best eater in the world. I mean, the name of my podcast is Smoked Meat, for Pete's sake. But I've always been fairly happy. And I
Yeah.
noticed after the strokes, I didn't get a lot of aftercare. Basically, I was told, hey, you had strokes. Let's do some tests to find out what happened. And nobody could ever tell me. And basically, I found things that would center me, like learning to smoke meat, learning to make sausage, things like that.
Hmm.
And becoming self-reliant and
Hmm.
becoming happy. And
Hmm.
that's got me where I'm back on an ambulance today in the middle of all this stuff. So,
That's great, Brad.
I see exactly where you're going with that, and I believe in it.
I want to actually, that is a myth that we also tell ourselves. That's, in my opinion, and some from the research I've seen, is that saturated fat and animal fats, animal protein can cause cancer. And I think in a balanced diet, it's totally okay, especially when you look at our talking about our evolutionary past as hunting and gathering and farming people.
Yeah,
Of course, meat was and animal fat was essential, especially prior to the last glaciation maximum 12,000 years ago, when plant foods weren't as available as they are today. We depended more on animal foods. In the archaeological record, you'll see, low evidence of cancer. You'll see almost no evidence of dental decay or bone degeneration. So one of my teachers, Arthur Haynes, talks about, when we hear about new things in the media, like that, we kind of use the lens of evolution
hmm
as our species evolution, a lens looking through the past, and you filter it through the new information that you're encountering. It really makes sense. It really makes sense, and it helps to diagnose which things you might want to take seriously and which things you could pass by as just another fad.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. And people kill me with a lot of these fads that are going on. The keto thing right now.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, everybody's an expert. Um, they want to put their body into ketosis. Uh, it's I'm sure it's got its place or whatever to a point,
Yep.
but your body needs things, and it
Yep.
needs carbs. I mean, that's just the way it is, and it doesn't need 90% fat. You know, and I think people are starting to realize this a little bit. I know people that have had great success with it, and I know people who have followed it to a T and went to the doctor, and their cholesterol was ridiculous. The doctor said, "Get off of it now, you're going to die."
Yeah, I have a lot of problems. I believe too it is a fad. I know that in northern populations, traditional peoples, Eskimos, I think that's more of like a derogatory word, but the Inuits, Aleuts, different
hmm
peoples in the very northern region who had limited access to plant foods, of course, had genetic predisposition to use fat as fuel.
Yeah.
And I do love fat. Don't get me wrong. I love, in my coffee in the morning, I'll blend in grass-fed butter and coconut oil and collagen and maple syrup for my landscape. And but my teacher, like who I mentioned before, Arthur Haynes, talks about. He has a video on YouTube called "Plant Foods of the Paleo Diet."
hmm
So there are a little myths that we tell ourselves about the paleo diet, such as that we, avoided salt, or we traditionally avoided nightshades, things in the nightshade family.
hmm
So when you look at traditional peoples living traditional diets throughout the archaeological record and in today, when you start paying attention and cueing into your environment, to your plant environment, your animal environment, which are codependent on each other and are responsive to each other, you realize that there are so many different plant foods out there, wild plants and cultivated plants, that offer us a tremendous value, not just calorically speaking, but also chemically speaking.
hmm
So like talking about epigenetics before, when you start queuing in and eating more wild plants, which I want to get into with you,
Mm-hmm.
you're telling yourself, you're telling your body, your spirit, if you will, hey, these are good for me. These things I remember generations ago. Let's, upregulate everything that makes us feel good. And yeah, these plants have all hosts of different chemicals. And so, things like herbalism, getting into herbalism, we could also get into that.
Mm-hmm.
Those are essentially, you're also essentially recreating our ancestral environment. So by taking in and using herbs as medicine, you're getting a host of new plant compounds into your body.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, we, you know, we could use that as a substitute for, which I think is, we'll call it a substitute. We should call it an intermediary substitute, because I think what I want to be moving towards is more of a, yes, incorporate that, but we're going to be moving towards a more self-reliant way of being, in terms of, we have a deep knowledge of our landscape, what's called nature literacy. So being nature literate, who's growing in your backyard, who's growing in the local forest, who's growing in that wetland. Because in conservation today, so let me just get back up a second.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there, in the last, let's say, 150 years, we've had different kind of conservation models. The one that has been predominant has been the leave no trace. Are you familiar with leave no trace?
A little bit.
So it's a concept that's essentially talking about, hey, you pack in, pack out everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And the problem I have with that is that, depending on what you're packing in, you might not be causing harm to that environment where you're going into, that national park. But certainly that tent that you just bought, or that industrial food that you just brought in, had to come from somewhere. So it was causing harm somewhere, just not right in front of you. That's just one thing.
And
But
I've never thought of it like that.
the new paradigm is conservation through use, or what my mentor likes to say, reciprocal conservation. So, for example, when we hunt, we are thinning the population, because a lot of these animals are going to die anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and might as well that we get food from that, and we'll become more self-reliant. Or with plant examples, for the wild leeks, the wild ramps, which I'm sure people have heard about, we can increase the population of wild ramps by having a knowledge of how to interact with those plants
Mm-hmm.
and harvest those plants. So we can, I could take that a little further, but let's just sit with that for a second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just went totally blank. The man. No, I'm talking about the hunting. I'm sorry, my mind just went blank on me this morning. Uh, didn't hunt a lot when I was small,
Mm-hmm.
but I started when I was about 16, and I had friends who were the big trophy hunters, and they
Mm-hmm.
want the big rack on the wall, they want the big turkey, all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And I've never been that way. I don't
Mm-hmm.
shoot babies because they need to grow some. I mean, that's how you're going to get. They're going to procreate. But I've always learned if you kill something, you better respect it. You better use every piece of it that you can, because that animal just gave its life for you. And there's nothing. When I say nothing, there's not a lot on an animal that can't be used when
Yeah.
it's gone.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that. They just send a deer to the processor. I take care of it from the beginning to end. I did a project with my daughter. She was in FFA a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine killed a wild hog and called me and said, "Do you want this hog?" I said, "Sure."
Yeah.
I went and got it, brought it home.
Yep.
Me and my daughter cleaned it.
Yep.
We butchered it. She ground it up. We made sausage. We cooked it, and it was called From the Kill to the Grill, and it went to state. Because we used every piece of that thing. Like My aunt used to say from the rooter to the tutor, you know.
But wait, say that again.
And
Say
my
that
aunt
again.
used to say from the rooter to the tutor,
From the rooter. What's the rooter?
the nose.
The rooter to the tutor. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I'm pretty new to. That's great, Brad. I'm pretty new to the hunting scene. I've done a lot of like scavenging
Hmm.
for roadkill, um, but I'm working on it. That's a trajectory I'm working towards. Actually, just yesterday we killed a. I'm at a farm in southern Vermont practicing biodynamic farming, which I want to get into with you.
Hmm.
But we killed a 2-year-old male cow, a cross between a Wagyu and a Jersey cow. Man,
Hmm.
what a story that was! So this cow, it took 5 shots to the head to kill. It wouldn't. So we first used a pistol, didn't kill the cow. Then we used a shotgun, didn't kill it. Finally, we used a what is it, 30 out 8. What is it?
30 out 6. That's
30
that's
out
what I went
6.
with.
And that did the job. But yeah. So that did
Yeah.
the job. And so we afterwards we went through the process of butchering. And so, like you said, we used pretty much everything. You know, we used from the hooves to the intestines to the organs to the hide.
Hmm.
You can even take it further. Using the bones for tools, the sinew. So
Yep. The
yeah,
Indians used to actually make the. That's what the middle of a dream catcher was animal sinew.
was it out of? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me
That's
know that.
that's what the web on a dream catcher is.
So I was, that was an intense thing. That was kind of like the first time I've really been there to to kill,
Yeah.
and I think that's extremely natural.
It is, and to me, it's a very, very personal thing because, while it's not a human life, you're still taking a life.
Yeah, it's a big life. That cow was a big cow.
Yeah,
That was a big life.
yeah, and it's like I say, when I kill something, I use everything because to me, it's that thing just gave its life for me. I'm going to respect it enough to
Hmm.
not waste any of it that I have to. That I don't have to because I mean, just man, nature gives you what you need, and that's my belief. Every piece of that cow is edible for a reason, and what's not edible is useful.
I love that. That is something that I think that I want everybody to take away from today is that right there. Is that nature provides, our mother provides, our mother earth provides.
Yeah,
If we know how to pay attention and relearn things and listen to our teachers who are still alive, or read those books, those what my mentor calls my human mentor calls the book elders, because
hmm,
sometimes books act as elders, just like those Foxfire series or book elders, you know.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. The Foxfire books, if you haven't read them, are amazing. They are amazing. I mean, they tell you how to do everything the old way.
Yep.
And I mean, they go from snake identification to building a smokehouse to, just about bathing a baby, just about. I mean, everything. This guy went up into the mountains and he just talked to people
Yeah.
and came away with so much. And, you know, I'm, I hate to say I'm what they call a prepper because the TV show made preppers look like idiots.
Mm.
I'm not the guy with the old nuclear silo. I don't have 10,000 years worth of food.
Yeah.
I'm not prepping for the government to come get me. If the government wants to come get Brad Pittman, guess who they're going to come get, whether I want them to or not?
Oh yeah, of
They're going to
course.
come get me. And I understand that. I prep for things like this virus,
Yeah.
like tornadoes, hurricanes, snow, things like that, real things.
My
And,
teacher. Excuse me. Keep going.
oh, you're good. Keep going. Good.
My mentor, one of my other teachers, Michael Douglas of the Maine Primitive Skills School, he talks about going from doomsday prepping to nature literacy. So, going from survival to a sense of thriving.
Yeah.
It's like, you get lost. Like he says, being lost, getting lost is like if you're only lost if you have a place to be and a time to be there.
I like that.
And like you said, nature provides, and if we know how to interact with the landscape again, being lost is kind of a myth that we tell ourselves. Is another kind of myth that we tell ourselves, and so if we can learn how to actually stay there and not call on that helicopter to come pick us up and bring us back to civilization, if you will, to the city,
Mm-hmm.
like that's our new home.
Yeah.
And so how do we go beyond survival into thriving in our natural landscape? And I think that's something that we're all kind of relearning in this new modern world, aren't we?
We definitely are. And, going back to the hunting thing, you'll appreciate this. Now, I know you said it took, several shots to kill this cow. And I'm not downing y'all by no stretch because, you took care of the cow. But, if you can sit and study and learn a little bit more, you learn different ways. Like, I know that the cow's got a small brain. That's why it took so many shots to hit him. He probably wasn't hitting his brain.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like with a deer, a lot of people shoot for the chest. I don't because one, that tears up a lot of meat, and two, you hit a deer in the chest, the heart's gone, and
Yep.
the heart's actually one of the best pieces of deer meat there is.
Yep.
I've pickled it and I've smoked it. Oh, it's phenomenal.
You pickled it.
Yeah, pickled it.
That's cool.
Yeah. I preserve food all kind of different ways. I'll like a lot of people do stew beef out of the deer meat that's left over. I'll take that same meat and I'll can it in like mason jars.
That's great.
And
That's
it
great.
lasts so long, and it's amazing when it's done. Basically, you cut it into cubes and pack your jar tight as you can. Put a little salt in there if you want to, a little bouillon if you want to,
Yeah.
and close up your jar. Put it in your pressure canner on 15 pounds of pressure for 90 minutes,
I love that, Brad.
and that's
I love
it.
that. Love that.
And it comes out just as tender and just wonderful, and it's got its own gravy with it too. So it's all natural. That's why I like making sausage. I know what's in there.
Mm.
I don't use a lot of cure in a lot of my sausages like a lot of people do because it's funny to hear me say it because I'm almost 300 pounds and I smoke like a chimney. But I do kind of care about what I eat. And when I do sausage like pepperoni, I don't cure my pepperoni. Pastrami I have to cure because it's pastrami. But if I don't have to put the sodium nitrate in it, I don't because it's so bad for you.
Yeah, I've heard that. I haven't experienced that much yet, but I'm looking forward to getting more into preserving and curing and smoking. It's traditionally how you get through winter in northern environments.
Yeah. Oh, we
You
definitely need
gotta
to.
put away food. You gotta put away food.
Yeah, we have definitely got to do some talking. I can educate you for sure.
Please, let's connect on those points, and I'd love to share some plant things with you if you're receptive.
Yeah. Hey, I look at it this way. I want to learn something every day.
Yep.
Because if I can't learn,
You might as well dead, huh?
yeah, something's wrong. But now you were talking about the biodynamic farming a while ago.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, great question. So it came out of the 20s. This man Rudolf Steiner from Austria. He's a philosopher, and he was into theosophy in the late 1800s and 1920s. He was asked by farmers who were noticing in Europe a degradation of food quality, plant quality, animal quality, nutrition, essentially. They were asking him, Mr. Steiner, how are we gonna create healthier and more nutrient dense food? And he came up with lectures in, I think it was 1924. This was taking place in Germany. He came up with his famous agricultural lectures. And so today in the United States, it's really taken off, and across the world. In India, it's very big. And essentially, the ultimate goal is to create nutrient dense food. But we do that by interacting and feeding the soil, using compost, working with the celestial bodies in terms of when do we know when to plant, when we know how to harvest, when we know how to seed things, work with fruit trees, work with root crops. So it's reading into that. And it is very much a spiritual agricultural way. And I think that's very important. I think that is a lesson that we can learn, we can take to all of our fields. How do we integrate spirit back into matter? How do we, because it was never like a separation of science really came about in the scientific revolution in the 1600s, 1500s in Europe, was kind of looking at the church and saying, hey, we want to question things differently, and we want to take things to another level. We want to discover new technologies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was extremely valuable for the human species. As you can see today, we have our computers, our iPhones, our a way of looking at the stars. But it's also, but what we need to realize, I've been realizing in that when we stepped away from God, we've divorced God, we've divorced a part of ourselves.
Yeah.
And biodynamics is one example, one amazing, constantly surprising example of a reintegration of spirit into our lives. And let me tell you, man, it can create amazing food. So I'm extremely grateful for learning about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a new biodynamic farmer. I'm happy to say that. I'm a first generation farmer, Brad.
Nice.
So, of course, we can go into a lot more detail, and I'm happy to share some resources via email about anything that we've talked about. And you can link to those books or podcasts or articles about any topics that we're talking about in your show notes. So just we could do that.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have these links in my show notes, and I mean, because there's just so much good information on everything that we're doing today. And this is I could do this for hours.
Yeah.
Because, like I say, I'm a believer. And obviously I believe in technology. I'm talking to someone that I had never met till a week ago over a computer in Vermont, and I'm in Georgia, and I'm recording
Instantly,
this
we're talking instantly.
Yeah, and I'm recording it so we can put it out to be available to literally every person in the world.
Yeah.
So I love technology, but at the same time, I'm a believer that we need to know the old ways of doing things. We need to know what nature has to offer, because I mean, let's face it, if things happen. I mean, I'm a worst case scenario person. I don't know anybody if you've heard of EMP or not, electromagnetic pulse. That hits, be it from a solar flare or from a nuclear weapon or whatever.
Yep.
Nothing we got now is going to work.
Nope.
My car is not going to crank up. I'm not going to be able to go down to my job and get on my ambulance because A, I can't get there. B, the ambulance ain't going to work either. Refrigeration's gone, so I mean, a lot of people don't understand. You've just caught all these fish, but how are you going to keep them from going bad? I know how to build salt boxes. I know how to salt fish. I know how to smoke them. I know how to can vegetables and, dehydrate things. And, we'll be all right. I mean, granted, it's some work, but it is what it is,
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm with you, man. When you look at in history, in prehistory, what happened in North America 13,000 years ago at the last glacial maximum, when the glaciers finally started to recede and disappear.
mm-hmm.
You'll see in the record, the geological record, what happened was some people were saying multiple comet impacts in Canada, or what's now Canada and Greenland. And what happened because of that was massive flooding and possible tsunamis in the aftermath, which is called the Younger Dryas. Tsunamis and wildfires. But and actually, you'll see because of that instance in North America, some 100 plus species of megafauna. So megafauna are 100, I think, kilogram plus mammals went extinct from our landscape forever. You know, the giant sloth, the saber-toothed tiger. They disappeared completely, almost overnight. But guess who was around to tell the tale? They were the hunting, gathering, and foraging, gardening, collecting peoples. Even if they were the populations were somewhat decimated, we were still able to succeed and repopulate. And even if we did lose stuff, we were still around, Brad.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, that is such a powerful example of just the when we start tuning into our environment and learning things again and relearning and remembering.
Yeah, because
open up a whole nother can of worms, a whole nother possibility.
Yeah, because I don't know if when this thing first started, my wife was at work and she was before the quarantines and everything. My daughter is going to be a senior next year, and she was going to take prom pictures at our house near Augusta. So I took my daughter to her job so that she wouldn't have to drive all the way up here and then drive all the way back down there, and basically made it easier. And I stopped by the grocery store on the way home. It's when people were first starting to do what I call panic prepping, buying all the bread and water. And I just stopped by a little grocery store on the way home and said, I'm going to get some hot dogs or a pizza or something. And I went in, I got my hot dogs, and I actually stayed there for about an hour just watching people. Was so amazed. And, I almost went to just find something so benign, something just totally useless, and put about 10 of them in a basket and walk around just to see if everybody went to get that. Because nobody knew. It was just, everybody was just panicking, buying whatever they needed or what they didn't need.
Yeah.
I've got a theory on the toilet paper, and you'll like this. The toilet paper and the hand sanitizer was the first thing to go, right? I actually did a video. I woke up one morning. It was still dark. I got dressed in the dark, so on the video, my shirt's on the inside out and backwards. And I took a square of toilet paper and squirted hand sanitizer on it and stirred it around in a little ramekin until it was a paste. I said, here's my theory. People are doing this and making redneck Vicks. And I took some of it and rubbed it on my chest and on my upper lip. So they think that's going to cure the disease. But I still don't know why everybody's having a fit over toilet paper. Because I've dealt with COVID and I haven't seen anybody that's just having uncontrolled bowels with it. But
I know we're kind of probably getting to the end here, but I've been listening to recently a podcast with a trauma expert, Dr. Gabor Mate. Talks about what trauma as the root cause of many diseases.
Yeah.
PTSD. And what he's talking about in relation to the coronavirus and trauma is interesting. People with trauma, PTSD, have lower immune function. And also, this coronavirus has kind of, what's this he liked to talk about? He said, society likes to distract us from ourselves. So with all the distractions, we rarely take the time to be quiet and present with ourselves. And what this is doing, it's taking away the distractions, so we see ourselves and we see those feelings again of that are reminiscent of trauma. That could be.
Yeah.
And what he recommends is that facing those feelings, instead of running away from that fear or that anger that's coming up, which has come up for me, that we kind of face the darkness and that heavy energy, because eventually it will turn. It will turn. And I definitely think that trauma is something that we need to look at within ourselves, because it definitely impairs our ability to be human, fully functioning human beings. Looking at hunter gatherers again, you rarely see evidences. Well, I mean, you could see, there's a researcher, Steven Pinker. He talks about that today is the safest time in human history, and I have issues with that,
Yeah, big time.
because in our past, you would have, you might have had trauma from hunting injury, or um, some trauma, physical trauma, but you rarely saw any of the interpersonal trauma, or at
Mm-hmm.
least if you did, you would have some resolve over it.
Yeah.
Some The tension was released, and there's a book called "Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers," is because when lions are hunting them, you see in the African savannas that, let's say, the lion misses and
Mm-hmm.
the zebra runs away, it will shake. It literally shakes its body free of that potential trauma. And even if that lion catches that antelope or that zebra, right before that animal dies, it shakes.
Hmm.
And that is interacting with your nervous system, certain aspects of your nervous system, and releasing that trauma.
Hmm.
And I think that is an extremely important aspect of today, of how we can take control of our health again, is how do we release that trauma and face that trauma and release it, and let, as some people have said, the earth accepts that heavy energy. How do we compost, if you will, that heavy trauma, that energy that is no longer of use for us? It was useful when we were in those potentially traumatic experiences, because it kept
Mm-hmm.
us alive, but it's no longer of use anymore.
Yeah. Well, I
How do we?
don't. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's pretty much it. That's what I have to say.
Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm actually one of the poster children for PTSD. Um, as a medic for almost 30 years, uh, after I had the strokes, I had to sit at home for 4 months and basically
Mm,
just not work.
mm,
And that brought a lot of it up to the surface, and it wasn't one traumatic event for me. It was, okay, this call was a drop in the bucket, and each drop filled that bucket a little more till it overflowed.
yeah, man.
And I still have things that result from that. I have, part of it's from the strokes and part of it's from the PTSD. I have a stutter that comes back, which is great when you're a podcaster, let me tell you. I actually sound like the water boy a little bit when I stutter, the way mine is. I would do it for you, but if it sometimes when I do it, it sticks, and that's really bad.
Yeah, it's okay, man.
But
It's okay.
but I have days where I cry all day long. I have days where there's just rage inside of me,
Hmm.
where I don't act on it because I'm a big guy. I know I can hurt people, so I don't act on it. But just these things, and there's not just one trigger. That's the bad part.
Hmm.
But doing things like the processing the meat, doing these podcasts. I'm loving these podcasts. Um, Getting on stage as a stand-up, doing my character videos.
Uh-huh.
Those kind of things I love doing, and that helps a lot
Hmm.
because getting back on an ambulance, the bucket's still getting full,
Hmm.
but I'm learning new ways to empty that bucket.
Why is that? Why are those things that are helpful, like the podcast? Why are those helpful to you? How?
Well,
Why?
it's just kind of a release. It gets my mind off of everything. It doesn't bury anything, but it helps me to understand that there's more out there than my job. While bad things happen, I have been blessed with. I'm not going to say I've got the ability to heal. I'm a tool, and I've been given the brain and the talents to do what I need to do to help people heal, and to be there in their bad situation where I may have seen, you know, 10,000 car wrecks. This may be their first one,
Yeah.
and no matter how bad it is, I've got to be the guy that looks calm. Well, on the inside, I'm going, holy crap,
Yeah.
and that can take its toll. To sit and watch. I've watched people take their first breath in this world. I've delivered 18 babies, and I've watched countless people take their last one. And that's everything in between. And it adds up and it takes a toll. But, you find these releases, and I don't know, my video channel's on YouTube is Brad's Comedy, all one word. It's actually got all of my podcasts are on it also. It's got some character videos that I do. Has all my stand-up on it. Just things like that. And that's a great release for me because I know that I'm making a positive impact on people. And I'm letting things out. I've got one character who's a clown. But he is the absolute worst clown in the world. His name's Murray. And he talks like this. And Murray is horrible, but he is so great at the same time because he is such a release and so much fun to do. Actually, around December, I filmed a 30-minute Christmas special with 4 of my characters. And it's just fun. And it helps release a lot of this stuff. Another thing that I did for the PTSD and the stroke symptoms, a lot of people are talking about CBD now. And I actually found a brand that has absolutely no THC in it. And I tried it. And I tell you, that stuff is a game changer. I had read stories about what all it does. And man, it stopped my stutter one day when it had come on really hard. And there was no getting rid of it. Because sometimes I can fight it and get rid of it. But there was no fighting it that day. And it was the first day I actually went and got it. And I vaped it. And within 20 minutes, I was talking just like we are now. No problem, no high, no nothing, just the good pieces. And, that's a plant. And it's a wonderful thing. So, it goes to show, nature gives you what you need.
Yeah, when you need it, yeah? When you need it.
Yeah. I like spinach. When I was a kid, I hated spinach. Now, it's not my favorite thing, and it's hit or miss. Spinach will actually give you kidney stones. And there are times I could eat one bite of it and get kidney stones. Other times I could eat 10 pounds of it and not have any problems. But I get on my wife's nerves because I'll start craving it. And the craving actually gets so bad, I'm like, look, I'll risk the kidney stones. And I found out it's because my body needs magnesium. And the spinach has it, and my body knows that and says, let's have spinach. And it's with anything, you're craving, your body knows, okay, this has got that in it. We need to get some of that. So.
Yeah, it's only, it's funny, you kind of get kidney stones or you get disease when you're out of balance. You know? So, it's like, it's easy, it's easy, we could blame, lots of things have oxalic. It's called, it's what happened, it's oxalic acid. So oxalates that can cause kidney stones. But it's found in chocolate. It's found in tons of things. But apparently, if you eat a lot of fish, having a high omega-3 proportion in your diet protects against kidney stones.
I have to remember that. Because fish is funny in our house. We all like fish. And I would eat it 5 days out of the week. I love fish.
Yeah.
My wife and daughters like it, but they don't like the idea of having it for supper. So if we have it, it's just one of those things I got to kind of spring on them, and they love it and they eat it. But if you say, hey, you want fish tonight? It's kind of like, no. But no, I love it. I tell you, here's a good fishing story you'll like. My land that I own near Augusta, I have a pond on it, and it's got catfish and bass and brim in there. And I had a friend over one day, and he brought his girlfriend with him, and we caught catfish. And she said, I've never had catfish before. So we took a big one that we had caught out of our bucket, took it straight up to my cook shack. While I heated up my flat top griddle, he filleted it. And he handed me one side of the fillet, and I put it on the griddle with a little bit of lemon pepper, and the other side of the fish was actually still moving while I was cooking one side of it. It was that fresh.
Yeah.
But oh man, it was so
Yeah,
good.
that sounds good, man.
Oh, it was amazing. It's the freshest fish I've ever had, literally. I mean, I've never cooked some while the other part of it was moving. And it was so good. And like I say, I knew exactly what was in it because I cooked it. I caught it, I harvested it, we cleaned it, and boom, right there. So there was nothing really bad for me in it. But man, I tell you, I could talk about this stuff all day long, but I know you got some stuff to do.
Yes, sir.
I'm definitely going to put these links in my show notes. And I've had a ball talking today. You're welcome on here anytime. I mean, we'll go over anything.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no telling what I'll talk about. I mean, I'm liable to come on one day and just start talking about Bigfoot. I mean, you name it, I talk about it.
Great. Yeah, let's digest this all, and I'm sure we've talked about a lot, and I'm sure there's still lots more to talk about.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, you're
I appreciate
welcome.
you having me on, Brad.
Oh man, I've had a great time, and everybody, this has been Smoked Meat, and it's Maximilian Gordon. Like I say, he is.
Actually, it's I actually go by LionMan.
Yeah, I was fixing to say LionMan School of Rewilding. I'm going to put the links and everything in my show notes. Y'all please make sure you go to him, visit him, take advantage of anything he's got to offer because I mean this is barely scratching the surface.
Yeah, but I just released I released an online course about an introduction to wild plant foraging for plant foods, plant medicines, and other uses for plants, wild plants. And it's about 4 hours of content, tons full of videos and articles, and I'm only charging $5.
Sweet.
Because this is the beginning. I put the last like 7 or 8 years of my research into this, and I really want to get people this information, and I hope it really reaches and resonates with them in their internal core, and I really would like to see the feedback and how I can make it better, and I want to reach as many people as possible in the most authentic way, and because I believe it's extremely important information, and I believe that the teachers that I've had have kind of given me the task, if you will, of bringing this to the people. So I'm bringing this to the people, Brad, and I'm really hoping that people receive it well.
I believe they will because like I say, I've had a great time talking, and I'm sure everybody's having a great time listening. And it's been Smoked Meat. Everybody go to these links, man, and y'all make sure y'all subscribe and share. And we're going to definitely have more with LionMan here coming up.
Beautiful, man.